Hello and welcome to another coding session with Rune. Today I thought I'd do a little improvised session about static versus dynamic dispatch. So to start off, I'm just gonna make let's make a library just to kind of show off our code. We'll keep this, we'll make our stuff here, and then we'll run our stuff in separate tests. Okay, so dispatch. So usually when you have a trait, let's come up with a scenario first, right? Say you want to make a greeter. You know, it's a standard implementation, standard example for a trait. So you make a trait greeter. It's gonna have a function which is just going to greet. It's going to greet using a reference to self, and it's going to greet the person with a name. Let's say name. Let's say this, right? And all it's going to do is nothing because this is a trait. Okay. So now we have trait. Before we do, let's restart the language server. There we go. Now let's create two structures that are going to inherit this trait, or actually not inherit, implement this trait, right? So let's say we have a struct. We don't need to make it public. Let's say we have a struct called polite greeter. I think I may have used this before in a video, but we'll see. We have a polite greeter, and neither of these are going to hold any data. And then we have a rude greeter. And what are they going to do? Well, we're going to implement greeter for polite greeter. And all it's going to do is say, good day to you, sir, or madam, good day to you. And then the name. That should be fine. Let's make things pub, because I'm going to get nauseous because of all these exclamation, or all these warnings. Okay, and then we're going to do something similar for the root greeter, just like get lost. I think we used get lost, right, for the first video on this channel. Okay, so this is a classic case of we have a trait and then we have two implementers of that trait. So then we can start off with something like, hey, we have a struct, which is our main application, right? And then we want to give the app, we want to inject a structure that implements greeter into the app. Say our app like needs to greet the user when you open the app, but you might want to use a different implementation based on, say, if you're running Windows or Linux, or if you're testing or running in production. So this is a pretty common scenario. So so this is where we choose, right? So let's leave this open for now. Let's give it an impl and just say we have a start function with a reference to self. And all this is going to do is it's going to say greeter.greet user. And let's create a constructor. New polite, and it's going to do self. So this is where we use the dyne keyword. So this is a pointer to a dynamic object, which can change. We don't know which object, so it's a dynamic object, but we do know the object implements the trait greeter. So all we know about this is it's a pointer to something we can call greet on, right? So we're going to do that. Greeter is going to be a box. We're going to construct a box, which is a pointer to, in this case, the polite greeter, right? Okay, and since it's a zero size type, it doesn't store any data, we can just pass it like this, right, to the pointer. It's essentially just like nothing. A unit type that the compiler can just compile away. And we'll create a root version, which has the root greeter. Okay, and obviously it's stored on the thing. So as you can see here, we're using a strategy that can create the same struct, right? But with maybe a different implementation for greeter. The app is none the wiser. It doesn't know anything, right? And then we can do different things. So for example, here is test polite. We can say that app equals app new polite. And then app.start. And it's gonna try to greet the user. One problem, I don't think it does show prints in test. Good day to you, user. And we can also do new rude. And it should show get lost, user. Okay. So the technique we're using here is called dynamic dispatch. Why is it called dynamic? Because we don't know the app that is doing the dispatching. By dispatch we mean where is this greet going, essentially, right? Like which type is actually going to call it. Like, is it going to call this greet or is it going to call this greet? We don't know, right? So we have to dispatch the function call, and it's called dynamic because we don't actually know, right? The structure itself doesn't actually know where it's going. You have to use dynamic trait object. So this is called dynamic dispatch. We can also make a static dispatch version of this, which will go like this. We're going to make app generic over G, and then we do require that G is actually a greeter. And then we can actually do this. We don't even need a pointer, because now we know exactly what the type is, right? Because you can now you can't do this anymore, right? You just can't. Let's see, what am I doing wrong here? Right, the impl needs to also agree with this. Now we need to have loose standing functions. So new polite app, and it's just going to create the app with a. We should probably create a new function here, right? So the whole crux here is that this function is aware of the type of greeter, whereas with dynamic dispatch, that was not the case. Why is my tab not working? Something is pressing my control key. Really strange. Greeter is greeter. Okay, and now we can just say app new, and at this point, the type of app is unknown, right? But we can now say polite greeter here, and then like this, and do the same for the rude. Okay, and now we have done it like this. We should import the, yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is a static dispatch version. Why it's called static dispatch? Because we know at compile time what the exact type is that is going to be used. And also this is the reason why we don't necessarily need to have a pointer or a box to it, right? Because these functions are made for the specific type. So since, for example, in this app, we have two different kinds of app, maybe the polite one and a rude one, it will create two different new functions. The same way that like there's two different greet functions. So the dispatching is already decided at like the very beginning of the app, static dispatch. And so we can see that this also works. And now we can do root app, get rid of that. And now we can see get lost user. So this is the difference between static and dynamic dispatch. Now